what you think about when you're born into a fire. Let them burn it out. Sell them to the richest buyer. They want to let the world decay. They tell us lies and fade away, fade away. We feel betrayed. We were raised to lose the race. Wake at the back of the pack, kill it anyway. Listen up now, because we're never dropping out.
What is up, Internet? I'm Aries Van Dam. How are y'all doing today? I had a great days off yesterday, and I decided I'm finally going to get around to Dave Smith versus Andrew Wilson. And a lot of y'all know that those are the two biggest people I like to amplify on my channel, because I think they have the two best messages around. So this one was a little painful for me because I got to watch two people I kind of look up to battle it out. Before we get into that, though, I did want to address some social programming I found at Dick's Sporting Good while I was looking for Nike gear. Check this out. If you ever been to Dick's, you know they don't put shit on sale. So I saw a sale rack and I was like, let me see what this is. And this is what the sale rack had. You can only buy good Nike shit on sale if you promote the social programming they want to everyone to go with. Do not buy this or this. So you can wear Nike clothes, but you can't get laid in them. That's for sure. Anyway, that I had to address. And also I wanted to address Rumble. I've been neglecting Rumble. I'm going to start trying to do more stuff for Rumble. It's just hard because there's no shorts over there. So I can't even promote very well. So, and I'm a nobody. Nobody knows me over there. So I'm going to start trying to do some more stuff and focusing on Rumble a little bit more. Cause eventually I do think that'll be my home. I don't think YouTube's even going to monetize me once I do get 1,000 subscribers. I'll be shocked if they do. So, but I do need y'all to help me and just subscribe. That's all I'm going to ask for. And as soon as I get 1,000, I'll never bug you about it again. I'm not going to tell you to like and subscribe. If you like it, like it. If you don't, I'm not going to tell you to, because I don't want you to if you don't. So it's just silly to even beg for that kind of shit. And I won't beg for any subscribers. Once I hit 1,000, I can get monetized and see if they're going to let me make money doing this here. After that, I won't bug y'all anymore for stuff like that. I may even do some IRL streaming in the evenings while I look for content, just because I feel like that's a way to kind of get people to watch the content and stuff and grow a little community around it. So I'm thinking about doing that too. But that's enough wasting time. I got to get to the debate. This is painful for me. But it's a very good debate. I'm fast forwarding past the opening statements to the 9-minute, 37-second mark. And we're going to go to about the hour 56-minute mark. That's when they start doing super chats and things like that. And it's not really relevant to the debate portion. So that's where I'm going to try and cut it at today. Let's get into it.
All right. Opening statement's done. So I'm going to try to stay out of it as much as possible. We'll let you two go back and forth. You only hear from me.
First of all, though, that is Rob Noor on the bottom. I've done one of his debates too. He is a frightening little man. Yes, don't let his garden gnome stature fool you. That is an assassin. That is a very deadly assassin in debates. And I'm hoping to show y'all some more of his content. So be aware, he is a very, very skilled debater in his own right, but he's the moderator today. So
me, if the audience can't hear because there's too much talking over each other. Other than that, got about an hour, 15 hour, 20 minutes. You guys go ahead.
Dave, can you demonstrate for us how you own yourself?
Well, what exactly do you mean by that?
Do you own yourself?
Yes.
Can you demonstrate that?
I mean, I'm demonstrating. We're both demonstrating it right now on this show.
Well, you're not demonstrating that you own yourself.
What do you mean by own?
Well, I think that ownership of a thing is just a social construction. That ownership itself is just a parameter of agreed upon criteria.
Oh, okay, but if you were
hang on, let me finish the point.
Sure.
For which, so that's how we know. So I own that guitar because we agree that I own that guitar. That's it. That's the only reason I own it. I don't think that there's anything which is that you can point to that would demonstrate that this exists outside of a social construction we agree to.
Okay. Well, I'm missing your point here.
My
So
point
you
is
just
that I
kinda-
think it's a social construction when you say that you own yourself. I don't think
Oh,
that
I didn't
you
say it's not a social construction. But
well, then you don't own yourself?
that's a false binary. I'm not. Hold on one second.
No,
Listen.
no, no. That's a law of logic. You either do or you don't.
No, I didn't say. No, you're asking me if I do or I don't. Do you own that?
This started off kind of aggressive. I'm not used to Andrew starting off mad. I don't know if they had some heat before this one. This is about a year old, and they have debated since, and they kind of made up and gotten to be a little bit of a friendship between the two. But at the time, this is their first meeting. I don't know. It seemed kind of like he was a little angry at first. I don't know what the background on this is. I'm gonna have to look into that.
Guitar?
Yeah.
Okay, but you just said it's a social construct.
Yeah, but I gave you the criteria for the social construct
Sure,
would
and
be an agreement of.
and I said I own myself.
Right, but when you
and we
say-
said- so as much as you own
Nope.
that guitar, you've
This
proved
is
nothing.
incorrect. When I say, do you own
It's not.
yourself? And you say, I'm not sure. Law of logic
No,
would.
no, 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 no,
Hang
no.
on,
I
let me
said- I said
finish.
yes.
Yeah, the law of excluded middle is going to show this. It can only be yes or no. Do you have self-ownership? Yes or no. I own the guitar because we agree we do. Do you?
I think you have self-ownership as far as you have force to enforce that. Like if your government allows you that, the force from that government will allow you to own that. But if you don't have the force from that government or your own force, then no, you don't own it. Whoever's bigger than you can come take it. So actually, this would be force too, just like some of the other discussions we have. So
Only own yourself because we agree you do.
Well, I don't agree that that's what ownership means, but you said yes and I said yes. So we're both exactly even. In
Well, then I
terms
want to
of,
know
like-
then I want to know how you own
Well,
yourself.
Well, look, if you actually look up ownership in like a dictionary, I think the definition that you gave would be a little bit different than that. So
I think you have ownership of yourself to the degree that your government allows you to have. Like if they take it away from you, you don't own yourself anymore. But you can do all the things you want to up into the things the government doesn't allow.
do I exercise my control over myself? Do I do
Just
so
like everything.
morally? Yes, I think so. And I actually think that in order for us to even have this conversation, we both have, in a sense, agreed to that principle.
I don't
it's-
think we have.
It's me versus you. Do
Yeah,
you
how have
own-
we
Do you own
agreed?
the arguments that you're making so far in this
No,
conversation?
you don't. How do you own an argument?
No, I mean, when I say that, I mean, is it yours? Are
It- it came
you're
out of my
saying-
mouth,
Are
sure,
the
but-
words you're saying yours?
But
and
how
the
would
words I'm
that
saying
make the
mine?
app?
It would be accredited to you via a quote. So it would be kind of yours. It would be accredited to you. You don't own it, but people will acknowledge that it was yours. So it is yours.
Implication that I own that thing.
Well, look again. Define own.
I think that the definition of ownership would be a social construct in which you and I, via agreement criteria, decide that X thing becomes property which is assigned to me.
Okay.
Or force makes everyone have to accept that.
Yeah. So
by
if that's
that
true,
by that definition, do you own yourself?
I would say by the definition of that social construction, I could say that you own yourself, sure.
Oh, okay.
But that doesn't mean anything. Let me explain why.
Okay.
Because
but-
if the
wait, what
social-
did we just
because-
do this whole time?
Let me
I'm not
explain.
getting it.
Because if the social construction, what if we change the social construct and we decide that you can own a person, Dave?
Right. Okay.
If you have enough force, you can own a person,
Hey, and what if we change the social
like slavery. We had enough force, so we did. That's everything, though. Force is everything.
construct and says, I own your guitar and I own you?
Right.
what do you-
That's
what's the
exactly
point?
right. What if we
Okay.
change the social construction of ownership to mean you can own a person? Does that mean that people no longer own themselves?
Well, the difference here, right, is that, and it's the word that I
In that case, yes.
mentioned that you didn't, is that I would say that ownership would imply that you're justified in that claim.
How are you justified in that claim?
When it said justified, it shows that you have enough force to enforce that. That's all.
How am I justified in the claim of owning myself?
Yeah, you just said if you agreed it's
Okay.
a social construction. So if we agree that it's a social construction, then we can own other people as via
so the
social construction.
major-
That would be justified.
Well, I don't think so. So the major difference there, right, is that as we're having this conversation, and clearly what's the goal?
They're not looking at this from the same lens I am. I'm looking at this as ownership is the same thing as a right. Your ownership is your right to own that thing, and all rights come from force. So if you have the force, you have ownership.
Goal here to persuade, probably not to persuade each other, but at least to persuade the audience who's listening to us, because we recognize that they are in control. Forget the word own, because that's triggering, evidently, but they are
I'm
in
not triggered
control.
by the word own.
Okay. When I say triggering, meaning that's going to start a whole nother debate about semantics.
Okay.
So
Yeah, but semantics are important in the debate.
okay, well, all right, let's not do this tactic of interrupting every 2 seconds.
This is them getting acquainted with each other for the very first time too. Dave came to this, even said at one point they were going to just do a conversation and Andrew wanted the debate. So he was thinking this is just more like a friendly getting to know each other kind of debate. And Andrew is a blood sport debater for a long time. So this is like Dave's awakening into blood sport debates. I think most of his debates at this point were on a stage. That's quite a bit different.
Seconds. So let me just finish my point here. So we are both presuming that the people who are listening to this are in control of their own thoughts, and we could potentially persuade them toward our cause. And so if we're doing all of this, we kind of are recognizing in some sense that it's more valuable to persuade people than it is to, I don't know, just enforce our will on them. And so in that sense, I would say that, yes, there is some kind of norm that there's a justifiable path where you can persuade people versus force them.
Sure. Well, I agree that you can persuade all sorts of people and that can be part of a societal norm and that everybody can agree that that's part of a societal norm. Right. That does not demonstrate that you own yourself. Thus, the principle, the key principle for the non-aggression principle, which is self-ownership, that's where the violation comes in. Do people own themselves? Is that a justified position or isn't it?
I'm saying that, yes, I think it is. But again,
then can you,
to the degree the state allows,
demonstrate it?
Well, what would you mean by that? What would it mean to demonstrate that you own
would
yourself?
You would have to prove that you own yourself.
That I can control myself, or what again, just be clear about what you're asking.
Well, here, let me give you an example. Yeah, I'll give you an example to the contrary. I have seen throughout all of human history that human beings seem to be able to own other human beings without much problem. That doesn't seem to be a problem. As long as the social construction of ownership of the time states that you can own another person, you seem to be able to just...
Or that if you have enough force to just take that person and no one can stop you.
It's fine.
Right.
So this axiom of self-ownership is not obvious to me. To be an axiom, it has to be self-apparent and self-obvious.
So what demonstrated that people owned other people throughout time? Prove that to me.
Slavery.
The same way you just said to me, prove to me that I own myself.
But I did.
No. Hold on.
I'll prove it to you again.
Well, hold on. Let's try to not. We're only a couple minutes.
You interrupted me. I didn't interrupt you.
Well, hold on. You just asked me to prove that I own myself, and then you asserted that throughout history people owned other people. So prove that.
Yeah, but we already did, and let me explain how. You and I already agreed that ownership is a social construction, and that throughout history, the social construction had changed where people were able to own other people via this.
I think the idea is a social construction, but force is force.
Social construct. So whatever the social construct is of the day, that's all it is. As long as you agree that ownership is a social construction, you basically have to bite that bullet, right?
Wait, no, I'm not even understanding what you're saying here. So we agreed it was a social construct, and then your next statement after that was, prove to me that you own yourself.
Yeah, a social construction doesn't exist in objective reality.
Right.
It's a term.
Prove to me that anyone ever owned someone else throughout history. And all you said was
slavery.
It was a social construct.
You mean like a contract of ownership between slaves or something?
No, it's your question. So you tell me how to
answer my claim is that ownership is a social construction. Do you agree or disagree with that claim?
I think it is a social construct, but there also can be ethical and non-ethical or moral and immoral.
Well, then if you make the assertion that it's anything more than a social construction, then the burden of claim is on you to demonstrate how it could be.
Well, okay. I mean, again, you're dodging my question here. I asked you the same question you asked me, and you weren't able to answer it either.
I did answer it.
By the way, part of the reason why I asked is because I don't exactly understand the question you're asking me. Are you asking me to say why I think, how I could prove that it is moral that one person should own themselves rather than someone else own them? Is that
that's not the question. So here's the question. Let me explain it to you.
Okay.
The non-aggression principle itself revolves around the idea that human beings own themselves, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So the thing is that you and I can agree that there's been tons and tons of slavery throughout human history, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So those people clearly own these other people. So this has to be a social construction of agreement is what is ownership. We agree that you own it, therefore you own it. What I'm asking for is some type of justified evidence that that is not the case and that there is some moral ought or some type of demonstration philosophically or otherwise that a human being actually owns themselves.
You own them as far as you have the force to enforce that. or to stand against the government that wants to take whatever right away from you.
Okay, so just to be clear here,
That's how I see it.
if I were to say, if you're saying ownership meaning just strictly control over who has something, then yes, there have been lots of times where people can come just take all your stuff and then claim they own it. And if you're saying the law recognizes it or the society recognizes it, then essentially they own it. So
they can do that with people too, right?
Right.
With force.
And in a sense, I agree with you. And that
So then
that
you
is
don't own
happening.
yourself.
Okay. Let me just finish what I'm saying.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. I mean, dude, we got a long show here, so let's just let each other talk. So in a sense, I agree with you. Yes, you can take possession of something. I don't think anybody is arguing that, and I don't think it's a very impressive point to make that, yes, people can take possession of something, and that could be codified by law or society. What we're talking about is something slightly different, which is justified ownership over something. So
Right.
then the claim is like whether it's morally right that you own this or not. Fair enough. And I'm sure there's lots
I'm just
of
looking for
areas,
the
but I'm sure
demonstration
there's
of what is
lots
morally right. Sure.
Sure. Well, okay. If you're looking for the demonstration of what is morally right, I'm sure there's lots of areas where you would believe something is morally right and something else is wrong. And the demonstration of it would be what? That this is what you believe. This is what seems to be right and wrong. This is what has been accepted. And
No, my justification would be divine command, not seemings or phenomenal conservatism, which
okay,
is what
sure.
seemings are.
So okay, but so divine command. So
Mhm.
what? And how would you exactly determine what is and isn't divine command?
Well, let's assume for a second that I was, I don't know, like delirious, right? And just thought I talked to God and he gave me commands, right? If it's just preference, if we're just going off of preference, just things which Dave prefers are true, and Dave just prefers that you own yourself because he does, then any preference that I came up with in this delirious state where God was speaking directly to me would be just as valid as whatever preferences that you just axiomatically come to because you just want them to be true. My claim here is that libertarianism at its foundation, at its fundamental foundation, is flawed because this axiom of self-ownership isn't actually true, but rather a social construction which is asserted as though it is a truism when it clearly is not. So it's a fundamental flaw. The reason that you guys come up with such absurd conclusions like that prostitution ought to be legal and all these other things is, by the way, Dave, you have to end up with that. Otherwise, people don't own themselves. Do you think the state should come in and stop your brother from unaliving himself, for instance? Do you think that they should do that?
Well, hold on. All right. Stick with your.
That's a little loaded. Like he's throwing the brother in there because you care about your brother. You don't want to see your brother die. But in reality, I mean, if somebody really wants to kill themselves, they're going to do it. The police investigate those type of things because the calls for help. That means it's not a real thing. They're not serious about it. Otherwise, we would never know about it. The police don't get called whenever you just decide you're going to do something and go do it. We only get the call whenever you reach out and tell people about it so that they can stop you. That's what we're doing. We're trying to help the people who are calling for help. The ones that aren't calling for help and they really want to do it, they're just going to do it.
Your point that you were making at first, because you're just jumping all around here.
Well,
So
no,
what was
I'm
the first thing you were saying.
Well, I already
there?
gave you the point. I'm saying I
What
reject
was
your
it,
axiom.
though?
I reject the axiom of self-ownership until otherwise demonstrated. That's my point.
Okay, so what would you, so you're saying that if I'm sorry, I'm just trying to understand the first part that you're saying here because I'm not getting it at all. So you're saying if somebody hallucinated that something was right and wrong and it was horrifically not right and wrong, that somehow that disproves the idea that anything is right or wrong?
If it's only axiomatic and based on preference, it would be just
So
as
how do you
valid.
determine if anything is morally right or wrong?
If it's from a preference base, you couldn't.
Okay, so how do you determine that anything is
I
morally
do
right
it
or
from
wrong?
divine command. You do it from preference. I'm
No,
meeting you
you
where
do
you're
it from
at.
divine command. What does that mean? Explain that.
So this means that I follow Christian ethics. I use transcendental categories inside philosophy to create justifications for the values which come from God's laws. That's what I do.
That's a lot of words to not say anything. How do you determine?
Do you know what
if something is right or
transcendental?
wrong?
Do you know what
No,
transcendental
It's not
categories
that I don't
are?
understand the words.
It sounds like
Explain
you
to
don't
me.
understand.
Okay, explain it to me like I'm really stupid. I don't understand any of the words. So explain it to me. How do you determine if something is right and wrong?
Okay, so what I would do to make these determinations is we start with objective versus subjective. What if is it a subjective value or is it an objective value? If we start with it just being a subjective value, then who cares? We never need to go any further than that. Just never need to go any further for justification. So what I've determined is that your values here in libertarianism are subjective value based. Therefore, there's never a reason for me to justify anything objectively to you because any subjective preference I have
Andrew,
is just as valid.
You're not answering my question. At
Literally,
all.
that's the most precise answer you could ever get. If you're a
how do you determine? If
I
something
just
is
told
right or
you
wrong?
divine command.
And then I asked you what that means, and you said
I just
nothing.
explained.
No, you didn't.
Yeah,
you
I
just
did.
said that you think my
To be fair, I think Andrew is quite a bit smarter than me and Dave, and I think that's what we're having issues with. Because I was confused by a lot of that too.
basis is
Okay,
subjective.
fine, Dave. I'll make it
What's
super
yours?
simple because God tells me so. Is that better for you?
Sure. No, if
Okay.
that's the answer. That's
the answer.
Okay,
God tells me
God
so.
tells you.
Yeah.
like, and through
He gave that as a condition earlier. He said that let's just assume that if I say that, that means God just talks to my head. That means he justified all that earlier. So
what means does God tell you this?
He directly communicates right into my brain. He's like, that shit's wrong.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, but okay. So, okay. So, just to be clear, the point of that is that Andrew, it sounds very good when you attack someone and say that's subjective, but when your response to that is God communicates directly into my brain, that also, I mean, I don't know what the word is for that.
Subjective.
But
would be
subjective would probably be the word.
But
he's just showing that they're both subjective.
that's my whole point. That's how I'm granting your entire argument. It's like it doesn't matter ultimately objectively.
But your counter is also subjective. So
Right. So then that means that my preference is no worse than your own preference.
Well, I mean, no, it means by your argument, we're even.
Yeah. If I'm using preference-based, if I'm using preference-based arguments, or I'm sorry, preference-based morality, and you're using preference-based morality,
Listen,
then we're equal, Dave.
To be clear, I don't think I am using preference-based morality.
Got it. So
But
can you
since-
make justification then?
1 second.
Okay,
Let
this is
me-
what Andrew was
again,
trying to
let me
get to.
Try to
Okay.
finish the sentence here.
Got it.
I don't think I am making subjective-based morality, but you accused me of that. And so my response to you is, so what's your objective base? And your response is, God talks to me directly into my head.
Yeah, for the purpose of
Okay.
demonstration.
All right. By the
Yeah.
way, God also talks to me in my head. And so,
Perfect.
all right, fine. Like,
Yeah.
all right.
So if God
By your
talks,
own standard,
there you go.
You haven't won anything. By your own standard, we're even.
it's not here to win
By
it.
the way,
It's
I
here
wanna-
to
all right,
demonstrate
I
it,
want to
Dave.
try to let's try if we can, because we're only a few minutes into this. Let's try. This got more contentious than I thought it would in the first few minutes. Let's try to just, by the way, because I want to have a good conversation with you, and I've been told by people who I love and trust that you were a guy to have a good
Yeah,
conversation.
but you keep
with.
on evading every question that I have for you.
Oh, all right. I don't think I have. But
So
okay.
let's answer.
Ask me a direct question. and
Great.
I'm happy to
Should
answer
the
it.
state come in and stop your brother from unaliving himself or not, Dave?
I would want them to. Yes.
Yes. Would you want the state to stop a man from having sex with his sister if it would lead to a non-reproductive act?
Wait, if it would lead to a non-reproductive
Yeah,
act,
she has no uterus.
but that
Yeah.
was supposed to be worse than if it would reproduce.
Yeah, it would be worse. It would be less
I'm
worse.
just saying that seemed like an unnecessary caveat to throw on there.
He'll
But
explain
okay.
it in a minute.
Wait, Jesus Christ! But what you're talking about, like adults or
Yeah.
children?
Adults.
Okay, fine. Because for children, obviously, that'd be. Yeah, I guess I would want them to.
See, I think Dave kind of got away from his libertarian side there. Me personally, I was a cop for 15 years. If I ever got a call that, an adult brother and sister were banging each other or two brothers were butt fucking each other, I'm just driving off because we don't enforce that. I've never had that happen. And I don't think I would even know how to enforce it. Like, how would we just randomly check on them to make sure they're not? Like, they're adults. I don't know how that would even be a issue for the state other than just to make fun of them.
Okay. So you want the state to utilize authority.
Well, not just the state. I would want anyone.
Okay.
Stop that.
So I don't
anyone
understand.
with the force to do it, or
Great.
anyone with the strength to do
So,
it.
so then those people don't own themselves.
No, I don't think that's the conclusion.
Well, if they own themselves, can you demonstrate what they're doing wrong?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
But that's a very silly and very look, this is a very like childish interpretation of libertarianism.
You're still not answering the question. You're just prattling.
No. I didn't. I immediately answered the question, and now I'm responding to the point you made. So I immediately said, yes, anyone with the authority to do it, please stop, or the power to do it, please stop. And then I was responding to what you said. So I did answer the question. What I'm saying is that the idea that if you own yourself, and this is the fundamental mistake that you made at the beginning, therefore I can't say anything is immoral, is ridiculous. And not only in the libertarian worldview.
Oh, I'm still saying it's immoral to bang your brother or your sister. That's disgusting. But I'm not saying that it's illegal. I'm not saying it should be illegal.
But in any worldview, there are lots of things, I'm sure in yours, where there could be things that you don't think are illegal, but you still, or you don't think should be illegal, but you still think are wrong. So that doesn't mean anything. If I think people own themselves, I can't think there's something horribly wrong about this.
That's not the point. So I'll explain again.
Okay, sure. So please.
If you want the state to go in, if a brother is banging his sister and she can't reproduce, I don't know how you could demonstrate.
Why does reproducing matter in this?
I'll explain
Sure.
why. So that you can't bank on reproduction as being a harm because it could have like some kid who's all fucked up. So I'm just taking that out of the equation.
Okay.
Yeah, that one you shouldn't do.
I'm just taking that out of the equation, right? She has no uterus, they can't reproduce, or maybe they're homosexuals, right? And they're just related. If they own themselves and they're adults, that is exactly what you would make the argument for gay marriage. They're adults. These adults are consenting.
I would have needed a big raise if you wanted me to break up two brothers trying to butt fuck each other. That's not what I got into law enforcement for. I did not sign up for Lannister Watch.
With each other. Can you actually justify why that's wrong?
Sure.
Then justify why it's wrong.
Well, I can justify why it's wrong. Okay, there's two separate questions here. And this is almost like, I think what you need to pick apart. So look, there's two questions. One is, could I justify someone using force to stop them? And then could I justify why it's wrong? You get where those are two different things?
Yeah, I'm just asking why it's wrong.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, so let's do that.
Okay. Do you get why those are two different things, though? You get the point I'm making?
Yeah, sure. So can you answer the question now?
Yeah, dude. Listen, man, do you want to like have a decent back and forth here, or like, do you want to not?
You're still not answering the question.
Okay.
Can you justify why it's actually wrong for two consenting adults?
Yeah. See, the thing is, I am answering the question. You're just kind of being a dick
Well,
trying to win the debate.
When are you
rather than
going to
having a
answer the
conversation.
question, Dave?
All right, give him a chance.
So is that actually like, does anyone listening to this think this makes for like good debate tactics? No, you actually are not like recognizing that there's a difference between these two things. So
I just told you I do.
Let's leave him.
All right, do you guys want to do this, man? I fucking like honestly, dude, this is just
You've
like-
we've talked way more than I have, Dave. I just want you to answer my question. Can you justify it or not, bro?
Okay. So anyway, I'll go back to saying, do you guys want to do this? Do you guys want to like do a show here, or like what's the point of this?
You wanted, I asked you specifically if you wanted a conversation or a debate. You said a debate. We're debating.
No. I didn't say that. I said we could do whatever you want to do, dude.
Yeah, so we're doing a debate. So let's not do a meta conversation. Just answer the question.
A debate doesn't mean you talk over me every time I try to answer.
I just want you to answer the
Here's
question.
No, I understand you do. And
To be fair, in blood sport debates like this, that is what that means.
I was, but you're
Dave,
just
1 second.
kinda-
Here's what we're
Sure.
gonna do. Dave can expound here on what he thinks is occurring here in this debate, and then before you come back in, Andrew, we'll give Dave a chance to specifically answer the question that you've asked. So Dave's going to do two things. Here.
Ask me the question again. I'm sorry.
Can you justify why two consenting adults who are brother and sister having sex is morally wrong?
Yes.
Then do it.
Okay, because I think it's for the same reason you would think. I think it's against nature. It's evil. It just seems horrible. I don't know. Do you have a better answer for why it's wrong?
Mhm.
Well, yes, divine command.
Divine command. Okay, fine. So I also say divine command. That's why it's wrong.
Well, but then
There
this
you go.
axiom, then the axiom of self-ownership would be wrong.
No,
How did
it
he-
wouldn't. No,
Well,
it wouldn't. And if you had listened to me when I
That's
was
so
responding
weird,
the first
though.
time, you would understand.
Well, here,
that.
let me now make my argument back.
Yeah,
If they
right,
don't, if they don't own themselves, right? Or if they do own
Mhm.
themselves, rather, and they're two consenting adults, just like two homosexuals consenting adults, why is it actually wrong for them to do that? You say because it seems like it's against nature, which is the natural fallacy. Couldn't I just apply that to homosexuals as well and say, well, it seems like it's against nature?
Yeah, sure. Maybe you could.
And do you think so? Your moral oughts are based around just things that gross you out?
No, divine intervention, bro.
Divine command?
Yeah, there you go.
So if it's divine command, then you're going to abandon libertarianism and you're going to
No.
come over to Christian ethics, right?
No.
No. But I thought you made your justification based on divine command.
So, okay, listen,
Okay.
it's clear that
Great
Dave-
point, dude. You're right. You have divine command, and you're asking me why it's wrong for a brother to fuck a sister. Listen, dude. I know, I don't know anything about you. I don't know why Jacob thought this was going to be a good idea. I know you dominate 20-year-old OnlyFans
Ooh.
sluts in debates.
I also
But what is your
dominate
fight?
45-year-old comedians in debates. What's your point?
41, motherfucker. And listen, and no, you're really not, though. You're asking questions about why it's wrong for a brother to fuck a sister. Oh, okay. I don't know. Because I think it's wrong and yes, awful. And also, do I think that the government, if we're talking about adults, is it being outlawed going to be a great way to regulate that? Probably not. What even is your vision? I mean, this is the dumbest fucking question to get into what the role of government ought to be. Yes, you're right. If the FBI is breaking in and stopping 25-year-old.
I'll disagree with that. Dave was a little unprepared for this. He should have done a little more research into Andrew, maybe watch some of his work, and I think he'd have been a little more prepared for it. But he's doing a good job here. Andrew is really doing a real good job, and I'm a libertarian, so I.
And 28-year-old brothers and sisters from having sex with each other. That's okay. We
But
need
they
the
do
government
that.
to do
Just so
that.
you know, they do that right now. Are you opposed to it? They actually arrest people for doing this, and they drag them off to jail, and they put them
Sure.
in jail for
I'm
doing
not-
that.
They may. I've never seen, heard, or experienced anything like that, and I wouldn't know how to handle it if I did. How would we even catch them? We would have to be surveilling their bedrooms.
I'm not nearly as aware of this as you are, Andrew.
They're on the law
but
books,
I'm
though.
not going to fight against that law.
Yeah, but
Sure.
here's the thing. Then what I don't understand is that if the argument for self-ownership is that consenting adults can do whatever it is they want to do, because they're consenting adults are not hurting anybody else, this would be a violation of the non-aggression principle. Why couldn't a brother and a sister engage in this in Dave's libertarian land? Why couldn't they? Why shouldn't they be able to? Honestly.
Sure. Why shouldn't
Because we got rid of asylums.
they do it is for moral reasons. I suppose you could make an argument that if people really do have freedom, then a grown, grown adults who are related should not be banned by law and should not have a cop bash him over the head with a baton for having sex with a cousin or something. Okay, but you're taking this to this weird extreme example where
That happens now?
Oh, sure. Okay. Anyway, so you're taking this to a weird extreme example where, okay, let's take it to the other extreme and say, do you believe that the government should rush into your house anytime you're doing anything where they determine that that's degenerate or not moral
smoking.
or productive? You're smoking a cigarette right now. Is that enough of a reason for someone to come get you? Would there be any realm where you would say, maybe the government shouldn't be regulating every inch of what I determine from divine, whatever that is moral or immoral?
Yeah, so actually this makes my point for me. This is great. So the reason that I just go ahead and concede a lot of these points, because there's no real reason to fight them. For instance, if you agree with me that the only justification that you can have is that, well, because God told you it's gross, and so therefore you ought to not do it, then this would mean that you agree with me in divine command and should be a Christian ethicist. That's why that's done. That's why I just make it super easy for you to go ahead and agree. And you did, you agreed. Absent, so I'm just going to ask this straight out, okay? And no, I don't believe in that sort of government overreach, and I can give you my systems and reasons for why that is too under Christian ethics, or Christian ethics, where we both take into account consequence, but also take into account duty. So I'm going to ask this: absent any kind of divine command, God didn't tell you anything, would you say that it's not moral, and can you justify why it's not moral for a brother to hump his sister? Could you do that absent divine command? Like, honest question, Dave. This is super important.
Sure.
I can say it's immoral, but that's just my opinion. Like, that doesn't mean the government should be busting in and breaking up two brothers butt fucking each other.
So I would say this, right? I grew up an atheist. Well, I mean, I'm Jewish, but I grew up like not a religious person. It was just, you know, kind of what I was born into. And I was pretty much an atheist for most of my life. And then I had some experiences as I became a young adult that made me think about God and kind of get in touch with him. And then it was really when I had my first child that I really found God. So I would agree with you that, yes, there is something from God that instructs me as to what is right and wrong in this world.
Sure.
However, but before I ever believed in God, yeah, there was just a deep feeling inside of me.
That's my thinking on it too. It's gross. I find it disgusting. And I can say I find it immoral because I do believe in God. And I think God doesn't want us doing those kind of things. I don't think that's the government's job to be enforcing what God wants, though. I think that's God's job. And he's going to do a good job of that when they die.
Me that would have been very wrong. And I do believe that was always from God. So
okay,
I don't know.
Then absent God,
what that proves.
So then absent God,
nothing in this argument.
Yeah, no, it does though, and I'm going to explain how. How, because you're saying that absent God is just your preferences. It's just how you feel.
No,
that's what makes what's moral or not moral. What would make it immoral? Absent God.
See, here's the thing, dude, Andrew. I think you're doing a thing here that a lot of like internet blood sport debaters try to do,
here,
which is that you're trying to win before you're actually listening to what I'm saying.
I can steel man the entire thing if you'd like.
Try to listen to what I actually said and grapple with that. What I said was not before I believed in God, it was just subjective. What I said was before I believed in God, I always had this feeling, and what I believe is that was always God.
So to steel man,
that's a very different thing than what you said. All right?
Sure. So I'll just steel man the position. The position, to make sure I don't get this wrong at all, is that I
think Dave still thinks he's talking seriously, saying that he hears a voice in his head saying that. Andrew said in the beginning that he's just going to let's put this out there for the purposes of the debate. He's saying that that's how he's saying he gets it. He doesn't get it that way. He doesn't just hear a voice in his head. And I think Dave's interpreting that as what he really meant. I hear a voice in my head too. That's me. That's how I think. I hear that one voice, but if I heard another one, I'd freak out. I'd be at a doctor's office.
Believe that there was some type of natural law given to you by God before you ever even believed in God, correct?
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
Great. So I steel man the position. So to my question, which he didn't actually answer,
sure,
which is this: absent God, if there was no God, could you justify why this would be immoral or not?
Yeah, I don't know that you could. I mean, I think absent God, it's very difficult to arrive at morality.
Right. So absent God, so you're divine command as well, divine command theorist, just like myself. So if that's,
I think it's more difficult, but I don't think it's impossible. I think if you're raised right, you can get to it without having to go to church. You just have to be raised right and have a mentor that teaches you the way the world's supposed to be. And that's how I fucking was raised up. My grandpa taught me how to be a man, and that's how I live my life. I do the things that my grandpa told me to do.
It's true, and you're a divine command theorist. And we have now shown how self-ownership leads to absurd conclusions, like a brother being able to hump their sister.
No, but I disagree with it. Okay.
Well, okay, why can't, if you own yourself, why can't you hump your sister if she owns herself, Dave? That makes no sense.
What do you mean by why can't you? Why can't, if you don't own yourself, why can't you hump your sister? What does that mean?
Good question. But my point is with the non-aggression principle, the entire
but
axiom.
You're not asking anything, dude.
Yeah, I am.
So let's just say this. And man, I wish you had picked an example that wasn't so fucking uncomfortable to talk about. But here, you, Andrew, don't own yourself. Why can't you just hump your sister?
You could.
Exactly. So what the hell are you asking? What's the question?
But
That's under Dave's framework, though.
But that goes to my point. I think that if you actually have self-ownership as something more than an axiom, meaning it's justified somehow that you actually do own yourself, it's not just a social construction, then you wouldn't be able to hump your sister if you did not own yourself, right?
What do you mean wouldn't be
But if you
able
do,
to?
but if you do own yourself, you can still hump your sister. The point being,
Andrew, do you own yourself?
Under the current paradigm of the social construction, we would say yes.
Okay, but so if you didn't, you wouldn't be able to hump yourself. I don't get.
No, you still
point.
could, but that is the point.
So that's it. So you still could. So what are you saying?
So let me try again. Just listen to what I'm saying, like I just did yours. In fact, maybe you can steel man this for me.
Okay,
maybe like I just did for you.
Let me listen, and I'll see if I can.
So my point is that self-ownership is why you should not be allowed to aggress against another person, because they own themselves. Correct?
Okay.
Is that correct? Isn't that the basis of the NAP? You own you, I own me. That's why we cannot aggress against each other, correct?
Sure.
Okay, got it. And yet here we're both talking about using state authority to aggress against people who own themselves, who aren't actually doing anything you can justify as being wrong outside of Christian ethics. And so the thing is that seems to dispel the NAP. Now, can you steel man that back to me?
Okay,
I know.
So you're saying that if we own ourselves, and everybody and an act of aggression would be violating someone else's self-ownership, then it wouldn't be an act of aggression to kill yourself, incest amongst adults, things like that.
Right.
Okay. So
if that's true, and the only moral oughts that we have for why you shouldn't do this is through Christianity.
No, I didn't say. No, by the way, I didn't say Christianity, but you said it. But
okay, fine. God, whatever the justified axiom is for God, for divine command. Okay,
sure.
Your brother sperm stinks. What's that mean, bro?
If that's the only way that we can justify that this is immoral, then the idea that you owning yourself and two consenting adults owning themselves in anarcho-capitalist land can't be true, because you are willing to use and violate their self-ownership with aggression because you think they're doing something morally wrong, but you can't justify what they're doing that's morally wrong.
No, okay, so again, this is back what I was trying to say before, that I think there's these two things that need to be separated. So there's the moral application of the initiation of violence, and then there's morality. And they're not exactly the same thing. And so if my neighbor, let's just say, my neighbor is not being a good husband and being a good father. Okay, so like let's say he's just very cold with his children and doesn't pay the bills on time and doesn't work and is lazy and does all types of things that I judge to be morally wrong. Like I think he should be a better father and a better husband. But if I go over there and beat him over the head with a club to make him be a better husband and father, it's not as simple an equation as, was he morally right or wrong? The question is it morally justified for me to enact this force against him in order to make, is that more moral or immoral than his initial sin? So that's the question that you get into when you start talking about government regulating a lot of these things. It's not as simple as you're making it out that, well, if people own themselves, then it has to be morally justified, whatever they do.
Okay, so let's see if we can't parse this out. And again, I'll see if I can just steel man this with my criticism. So the thing is that I agree. We can look at scales, right? We can say that we can get to absurd conclusions if we were to say that there's
fascinating
no time or place.
That must be why I always thought my sister stunk.
To apply some sort of aggression towards somebody, right? Otherwise, you would aggress on them for anything that you consider some kind of moral failure. And obviously, that's not what either of us are after.
Sure.
What I'm saying is that if we take it to its logical conclusion, libertarianism, which is what I said in my opening, as a consequence of itself, has to actually lead to degeneracy. And the reason is because of the idea here is that I own me and you own you. And if we consent to the two things we do together and it hurts nobody else, therefore not violating the non-aggression principle, which is the foundation for which this thing revolves, then how can you make ever a claim against homosexuals getting married or against incest or against any of these things? How can you possibly make that claim? That's the ultimate question.
Okay, so a couple things here. I don't think that's the ultimate question, and I do think that I could make the claim against that in the same way that you could. And I think we already established this, right? That we can both make the claim for the exact same reasons, because we believe in God and we believe in morality and we believe that this is immoral. So we both have the exact same ability to make the claim. But if we're talking about what your more, I think, broader point that you made there, that libertarianism leads to immorality, I think is completely wrong. And I think this is like kind of the most important fundamental miscalculation that a lot of people on the right who reject libertarianism make. The idea that, well, freedom and liberty is really what leads to degeneracy. And that's just not true. And in fact, empirically and logically, we can look at the situation, particularly the situation of the United States of America, and go, look, as the government has grown bigger and bigger, you've seen degeneracy get more and more out of control. And I understand why there is a move.
I have a theory that loneliness leads to degeneracy, because whenever you're dating women or you have a good active social life, you're less inclined to lean towards degeneracy. I think that part of the problem with the world is that all this feminization that makes the women hate the men, it's causing men to be more degenerate because they're just giving up on finding a woman.
Movement against degeneracy. I understand we live in a moment right now where I think our society is essentially disintegrating. And I think that that's one of the things that, Andrew, you kind of are, I don't know, prominent for pointing out. The disintegration of values and norms all throughout.
But the reason I believe that those values and norms are being eroded is because of libertarians and social leftist elites who often will move towards this principle of non-aggression. They just do it in two different ways. The way one, which libertarian does it, is by saying, if I'm not violating you and your non-aggression principle in some way, then you really have no claim to tell me to do anything, and everything is affirmed through private property. The leftist just affirms it the opposite direction, says there's no such thing as private property, but they apply the same principle of, if I'm not hurting anybody, then what's the problem? And so as we dive into what is the non-aggression principle, the non-aggression principle is the principle that if you are not aggressing against somebody else and you own yourself, they cannot aggress against you. So via consent, you cannot utilize the state, Dave, to have them go and break up an incest family who is all consenting with each other and having orgies nightly. You can't do it.
I understand that's your perspective on this.
Why would you want
to? It has nothing to do with what I'm getting into. So actually what the non-aggression principle implies is that at best, government ought to be severely restricted, and at worst, government ought to not exist at all. Now, as we've had the rise in government, and I mean, look, in the United States of America, just in the last 20 years, in the last 20 plus years, which we could go back a lot further than that, you've had a tremendous growth in the size of government. And what happens as the government gets bigger and bigger is that all of the things that Christians and traditionalists tend to value get undermined. And so this institution of the government that is inherently based on violating the non-aggression principle does its absolute best to replace, take over, and monopolize all of the areas where traditionally family and community had domain. And
Yeah,
so
but
I
why would
think
that be problematic if the non-aggression principle logically should be ignored for these moral oughts? That's
hold on,
that is the
that's
question.
Well, hold on. That's a separate question. The point I'm making is that it's not an outgrowth of the non-aggression principle. It's an outgrowth of a rejection of the non-aggression principle. That's actually what leads to all
So
of this
then
stuff.
if we were to have the non-aggression principle with a shrunken government, are we still going to use the government in order to aggress against consenting adults who want to have incest?
No.
Or not?
As long as a government exists, it will be used to aggress against non-consenting adults. And
Great.
So, yes,
then
I don't know.
Yes.
Listen, Andrew, you're trying to obsess over this incest argument. Okay, laws
It's foundational.
Laws against incest. I'll grant you that. Sure, fine. Can we move on to any other topic now?
Yeah, but
Can we move on to talking about the state of the country as it actually exists?
Yeah, but this is the
pretty
state of the
funny.
country as it actually exists.
Well, hold on. It's pretty funny because we live under the most powerful centralized government in the history of the world. The biggest organization in the history of the world is the United States of America's federal government in Washington, D.C., spending over $6 trillion a year, employing millions of people with the capability of overthrowing regimes all around the world. And instead, the argument we're getting here is, but if there was no government, who would stop an adult brother and sister from fucking? That's kind of goofy, man. It doesn't really have anything to do with
I just want to let you know
we're
that
living
saying
through.
it's kind of goofy isn't an argument. You just said if we scale the government down to its umpteenth point of scale down, as long as there was still a government, you would want them to enforce action via violating the non-aggression principle for your preference. So if there was,
No, that's not what I said.
Well, it's Dave, it is. It's an
It kind of
intelligence.
is.
If the government's really, really, really big and enforce it right now, and then you say, but if it was really, really small, we would still enforce that because you want to have those laws, then regardless of the size of government, the degeneracy is still going to exist, right? And it's still going to need to be enforced against regardless of the size of the government.
Wait, I'm sorry, just can you rephrase the question? What is it exactly you're asking me?
I'm asking you, if we reach anarcho-utopia, we scale the government
I'm
down
not for a utopia, but
okay,
so
but
whatever.
if we reach anarcho, whatever you want, as the ultimate, right? The government is now scaled down to the point where it's essentially gone, right? Would you still want enforcement against this kind of thing? And how could you have enforcement against it without a government?
What against what kind of thing?
Like incest or gay marriage or any of these degenerate actions.
Okay, well, I think
I don't think it was a big issue for Dave. I don't think he worried about it too much.
there's a pretty big gap between incest and gay marriage, but I will say that
What?
I think there's a gap between that.
What is it?
But I think they're two different things.
Yeah, they're two different things, but they're the same as far as two consenting adults doing what they want, right?
Yeah, me and you doing this debate are also two consenting adults doing what they want, but there's a gap between those things. So anyway,
what does that have to do? I mean, it
Oh my
logically
God,
tracks that if we got, dude, you can't go on these long rambling diatribes, and I do 4 seconds. I do 4 seconds, and you go berserk. Just calm down. Let me ask the actual question.
Dude, come on, man. I asked you to clarify your question, and then
I'm trying to clarify it so that you understand it.
But don't act like I'm going on these long rants and you're not talking. I mean,
well, you filibuster. You don't say that much, but I'm still willing to engage.
Oh, come on, Andrew. You're
I'm
full of
super
shit, dude. Whatever.
concise. So I'm super concise.
Okay.
I'm going to get right to it, right, so that you understand what I'm saying to you. What I'm asking you is that the enforcement mechanism against this degeneracy, which you consider to be morally wrong, absent a state, are you still going to want an enforcement mechanism against these moral wrongs? You say, no, there's a big difference between incest and homosexual marriage or homosexual sex. However, the truth is that both of these things are exactly logically similar when it comes to two consenting adults doing what it is that they want when they want to do it without hurting anybody else. How's that not the case?
Well, again, as I just pointed out, we're also two consenting adults doing what we want without hurting anyone else, but I think that's very different. So I'm just saying that I'm not even saying I support either of those things. I'm saying I see them as different. No, the truth is that if we didn't have what we have today And this is what happens with every very powerful centralized government, is that their biggest enemy becomes the family, the church, the community, because they don't like things that compete with them. If we actually got rid of all of the impediments between that, you would see an enormous return to normalcy in this country. You would see, I mean, look, starting even in the 1930s with Social Security, when you had the government take over the role of, we'll take care of old people when they get older. What you used to have was what? That parents would rely on their children to take care of them when they get older. Once you remove all of the disincentives toward normalcy and family and community, if the state was to be reduced to the size that you're talking about, no, my concern would not be, do we have federal agents with guns going in to break up incest amongst adults anytime it's happening? I don't even know how you would go about enforcing that.
What about people who just want to transition?
Again, the transitioning stuff is totally a statist product. This is something that's come out of the universities that are essentially government programs that has been perpetuated by the corporate media and
yeah, I'm not disputing any of that. Should they be allowed to do it though?
No. Well, that's
no,
listen,
no.
Well, okay.
Not to children.
Let me say this to be clear. Children, absolutely not. You should not be allowed to do that. Adults,
sure, cut your dick off. What do I care?
A doctor should lose their license if they were ever to perform a surgery.
But it's voluntary.
Sure.
And they consented.
But a license could also be voluntary, and a medical board could also be voluntary. So what does that mean?
Well, so that's interesting that you bring that up, considering that the AMA was just a large corporate entity that was not government regulated. Did it get government money? Started off as a trade organization, in fact, and what it did was it defamed all other types of medicine.
Neither can I.
That was not the government doing that. That was a private institution which was doing that for the purpose Carnegie. Another private institution, Carnegie. So the thing is that private institutions are just as susceptible to this type of overreach as the government is. Well, now, hang on, let me finish. My turn.
Sure. Go ahead.
So as we dive into this, though, these medical licenses, why would you even need to have a medical license in an anarcho-capitalist system? You wouldn't even need to have one. And the voluntarism then of this man who wants to go in and have this elective surgery done, why would that be a problem? There's no medical licenses, Dave. It's anarcho-capitalism, baby.
Okay, so if you're going to say that the worst case scenario in anarcho-capitalism is that some random man could go in and someone would give him this surgery, okay, fine, I guess. I think that if you're asking why there would be licenses or why there would be voluntary organizations, because that's what human beings always naturally gravitate toward. But regardless of that, none of that is really the problem. The problem in our society is that this insane shit is being pushed on everyone, and it's being pushed by giant corporations who are connected to the government. It's being pushed by the government class, and most importantly, it's being pushed in the government schools. One of the things, and
it's also being pushed by private institutions and think tanks who go to lobbyists and influence the government.
Let me finish
let's let Dave finish. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So one of the things that I would say to people listening to this, because I hope you guys will kind of try to internalize this a little bit. Look, this whole shit, all of this insane degeneracy is being pushed by the most powerful people in this country. And it's not as if this just organically arose out of nowhere. I hope you guys would at least consider the possibility that, look, the government always, by its nature, moves into the areas that were traditionally left for family and community and churches. And even something like educating the kids. This is one of the biggest problems that we have, that the government is in control of it. And why? And what would happen if they weren't? It would fall back into the realm of families and communities and churches. And what do you think would be better? What do you think would be better? This being run by Washington, D.C., or this being run by your local church? That's kind of the point I'm making. And if that means I have to sacrifice the FBI going on hunts for people having incest, I'm willing to make.
Yeah, I mean, these are almost great points, except that you forget like these institutions like the AMA and this type of thing, which started out 150 years ago. That the government came in, they used to come in with antitrust laws and break these things up. And under anarcho-America corporatism, these antitrust laws would not exist. These people would become.
Do you know anything?
Let me finish, Dave.
Okay, I apologize. Go ahead, Andrew.
Okay, so anyway, over and over again, we see what happens when corporations also gain a huge leverage on power when it comes to no check on them from any government entity. This was, in fact, the entire point of Franco's Spain and why Mussolini came up with the idea of fascism to begin with, which was that the state needed to stop large trade organizations from swallowing up small trade organizations. That was the point.
All right.
Let me finish, man.
Sorry.
I thought you were done. They recognized that this was an important thing because what ends up happening is corporate power can also become elite and it becomes a government unto itself. Anarcho-capitalism is not going to stop that from happening. And on top of that, when we're talking about these moral oughts, these moral claims, there's not going to be medical licenses. There's no driver's licenses. There's none of these things which would protect you from this degeneracy, which your libertarian idealism leads us to every time. You can't even tell us why any of these things are wrong to do, Dave.
Okay. I already told you, and I have the exact same answer for what you have for why they're wrong. But listen, let me ask you this. Have you, because I know you call yourself a paleocon on Twitter. Are you familiar with like the paleoconservative thinkers? Like
Pat Buchanan's my favorite. Yeah.
Okay. By the way, for anyone listening here, read every Pat Buchanan book you can get your hands on. They're the absolute best. And Paul Gottfried too. You really should read him. He's just so good. And Sam Francis and all of these guys, dude. Go read them, and you will understand why this is just not right.
No, it's not, because Pat Buchanan would agree with me. He would say these moral oughts. He would say these moral oughts are going to require state enforcement no matter what. That's why he was a paleocon.
Okay, but what Pat Buchanan would not agree with you on is this idea that if there wasn't the government regulating these things, there'd be no reason for anyone to have licenses or something like that. That's just not true, dude. And
who would license them?
Listen. All of these guys, the Pat Buchanan, Paul Gottfried, all of these guys, Sam Francis, they all said that a huge part of their program was a drastic cut in the size and scope of government.
Because they didn't like the military-industrial complex.
No. Not just that. Yes, Andrew, believe me, I know this stuff, so I'm not wrong about this. Yes, they wanted a cut in the military-industrial complex, but not just that. They wanted to destroy the managerial state. That was their entire plan. Paul Gottfried said, and this was his view, which I thought was a perfect way to say it, which I think you should really consider, that he goes, I am strategically a radical libertarian. And he was very clear that he's not a libertarian because he believes in rights in the same sense that I do. Like he was saying, I don't believe in your right to live any degenerate lifestyle that you want to, but I'm strategically a radical libertarian because he recognized that the only way that you could ever return to normalcy, culturally speaking, was to get DC out of the mix. That the centralized federal government cannot be this in control of the way children are raised, the way people are educated, the way people get healthcare and education and housing, without it totally perverting the natural order.
State and local governments are just as susceptible to these things, Dave, from lobbying and everything else. And you can't stop.
No, they're not.
You can't stop lobbying, and you can't stop people who have the will of saying, I own myself, from demanding that they be able to be represented, from demanding that they be able to have lobbying, from demanding they own themselves. They're consenting.
And that has nothing to do with self-ownership, but okay. But
it clearly does, Dave.
Listen, I would highly recommend, instead of you just trying to win this point against me, go read what Paul Gottfried and Pat Buchanan had to say about this. Because
I don't understand. Why can't you make their argument, Dave?
No. I can make their argument.
Make it.
I'm just saying. I'm saying, Andrew, you're already in the mode of not trying to hear a point I have to say.
I've heard
You're just
everything
trying
you
to
said,
fire back immediately to get the win.
Yeah, I don't agree with you, so I'm arguing with you. That's how that
Okay,
works.
I'm saying, right. Okay, I'm saying that these guys who you call yourself a paleoconservative, the people who were the leading thinkers of paleoconservatism, made these points really well. I'm just trying to say, maybe go get it from a source where you'll actually be able to listen to it from. I'm
listening to it from you right now. I'm arguing with your points because I don't agree with your points. Okay. And when we get to these ought claims of what we ought to do, it seems like you're talking out of both sides of your mouth. You're like, oh, I think doctors should have their medical licenses revoked for doing this bad thing. But if we really looking at what self-ownership would be in anarcho-capitalist land, there wouldn't be these licenses to begin with. I don't really understand why it is.
Plenty of licenses.
From who? Who would they be issued by?
Organizations, the same as they are now. What do you mean?
So the organization which issued the license would have some sort of authority and would be able to use force, right?
No, not necessarily, but they would be able to use their own version of, like, someone could be banned from their organization. Are you actually making the kind of like Bastiat thing where you can't separate government from society and that there can't be anything other than I mean, look, obviously all of the government involvement aside, but we all know that we were told a couple things not to say before we got on this show, right? Because of the YouTube government. There's lots of different.
Yeah, why would you have a problem with YouTube? That's a private organization doing what it wants, Dave.
What are you asking me now?
Why would you have a problem with YouTube? That's a private organization doing what it wants.
You guys, by the way, can you guys see? This is what's frustrating to me. If you could see, I just made a point. It was an excellent point. And then you immediately just pivot to something else and move the goalpost. So anyway, the point I was making was that there can be private organizations that can have their standards also. And then you pivoted to saying, do I support YouTube and what they do? In what context? What do you mean?
No, what you said was we had some TOS or things which would be TOS that we couldn't talk about on this private platform. But you must support private platforms existing because you're an anarcho-capitalist.
No,
so what's the problem? So you don't support private platforms existing?
He's not an anarcho-capitalist.
Listen, man, do you support private restaurants existing?
Sure.
Okay. If they brought you, you ordered a T-bone steak and they brought it to you and it was freezing cold, would you support that because you support private restaurants existing?
No.
Exactly.
What does that have to do with anything?
It proves exactly.
But you believe that the restaurant should have the right. Wait, Dave. You believe
something existing doesn't.
That's super weird, Dave. So you don't believe that restaurants should have the right to serve you a cold steak?
No, I do.
Well, then what are you talking about, Dave?
Did you honestly not get that?
I didn't honestly get that. No, it made no sense.
All right.
But listen. What Dave is,
dude.
What Dave is saying is, I don't support you doing that. But what Andrew's saying, do you support the right of a private organization to make their own choices? To which I believe Dave's answer is, yeah, they could make that choice, but I personally don't like that choice. I'm not in support of that choice. But I think Andrew, the point he's making is, yeah, but if you had an anarcho-capitalist society, these bad organizations would exist and they would do bad things. And you would have to say they're allowed to do it.
Well, okay, fine. If you want to say, oh, if we had an anarcho-capitalist society, this thing in my head would happen and it could be really bad, whatever. I'm not going to sit here and even argue about that stuff. Okay, fine. I'm talking about, how about in the real world? We live under the biggest government in the history of the world, and look what it's led to. Let's talk about the world we actually live in.
Okay, let's talk about the world that we actually live in. It's my belief that the leftist paradigm, which is a libertarian paradigm of the non-aggression principle, is how leftists are able to control inside this ginormous government apparatus, which they're continuously expanding. I think that they utilize victim classes like LGBTQ and others and say if they're not hurting anybody, then what's the problem? Libertarians have no way to counteract this because they can't justify why it would be a problem either. So what they end up doing is saying, well, we can't really say shit, can we? We can't really tell you that gays can't be married. We can't really tell you not to expand victim classes. We can't really tell you any of these things because ultimately you believe in the same principle that they do, which is do whatever the fuck you want as long as you're not hurting anybody, man. The good is the good, man. Well, smoke the
no,
dope,
so
man.
all of this is that's just completely ridiculous. I think
Okay.
that libertarianism, if you follow it to its logical conclusion, would tell you that the Civil Rights Act was not justified, would tell you that government funding all of these universities is not justified, would tell you that all of this stuff, like I mean, it would tear down the entire thing.
Wait, it would tell you slavery wasn't, or abolishing slavery wasn't justified?
What?
Would it tell you that abolishing slavery
Wait, what
wasn't
does that have to do
justified?
with what I just said?
Because that was an act of government, right?
Wait, hold on. But what does that have to do with what I just
Because
said?
when you're talking about civil rights, we're still going back to self-ownership.
The Civil Rights Act has nothing to do with slavery, dude.
No, but it has to do with self-ownership. And pre-Civil Rights Act, there were slaves, right?
No.
Yet there wasn't.
When did you think the Civil Rights Act happened?
The Civil Rights Act happened during the Jim Crow era. But what I'm talking about with slavery specifically is, did they have
100 years before the Civil Rights Act?
Yes. Did they have the right to self-ownership?
Anyway, yes, slaves had a right to not be slaves. But anyway, the point that I'm making is that
then we have logical extensions here, then, Dave, that we have to contend with.
Okay, leave Dave finish his point.
All right, Andrew, whatever, dude. All right, listen, the point that I'm making is to just say
That was a good point.
that what's happening in a college campus, which is essentially a government program. I mean, all of these colleges, whether they're like state schools or whether they just had all of their loans, guaranteed by the federal government or directly given out by the federal government, it's a big, giant government program. And the idea that they would ever sustain themselves in a market is ridiculous. And the fact that there are young people in those groups now want to identify as not the gender that they were born in has nothing to do with the non-aggression principle or self-ownership or anything about liberty.
How does it not have to do with
philosophy on government?
Yeah, it does. It does. That's
no,
bullshit.
it doesn't at all. Doesn't at all,
yeah,
dude.
not only that, but I've been demonstrating it over and over, and you have no defense from it. If you own yourself, why can't you choose your gender? Why can't you get your appendages cut off? Why can't you do these things, Dave? Why shouldn't you be able to?
Yeah.
Wait, if you don't own yours, listen, this is the thing I think you're not understanding, Andrew. I don't even get what you're saying here. If you don't own yourself,
Which I don't think you do.
Right. Okay. Why shouldn't you be able to get your
That's my whole principle. Is it because there is no actual self-ownership?
Okay. So okay, I'm saying if
That's
you're
a
right,
non sequitur, Dave. It makes no sense.
Oh my God.
Okay.
What's a non sequitur, Andrew?
The
What
sequitur is saying, but if you don't own yourself, you can do those things too. It has nothing to do with whether you do or not.
Right, but you said, what if you do own yourself? And I'm saying, but what if you don't? So that's the point.
Yeah, what does that have to do with anything? That's the non sequitur.
If I may, I think that there's two ships passing here. I think that the argument that Dave's making is this. If we decrease the size of the federal government and the government in general, as if he's suggesting, culturally, there wouldn't be the sort of brainwashing that's going on through those organizations that make these things a problem. Andrew's saying, though, he's saying, but the principle of if you own yourself, you could do whatever you want is foundational to a lot of these egregious behaviors that we would see. And so even if we shrunk the size of government, if we did so based on the mentality of, well, you could do whatever you want as long as it's agreed upon by consenting adults, we would see a lot of behavior that he finds to be undesirable or grotesque or sins, such as incest, homosexual relationships, etc.
Oh, all right. Let me ask you this. So
Great job by Rob Noor there. Jesus, that was good.
I think we could probably all agree that between, let's just say in the last 100 years, okay, the size and scope of government in this country has grown enormously. Obviously, if you are familiar with the paleo-conservatives, they were, hearkening back to the old conservatives who fought the New Deal back in the 1930s. And I could go back a little bit further than that to Woodrow Wilson creating the central bank and the income tax. But you have the New Deal, you have the expansions of government in World War II, the expansions post-World War II with the creation of the CIA and all of that stuff, the national security apparatus, the global empire. You have the Great Society in the 1960s. You have, I don't know, you fast forward to George W. Bush creating the Department of Homeland Security and the war on terrorism and Barack Obama and all this stuff. Do we have more degeneracy now or then? does it seem like the growth of government
Yeah,
has...
but that's a correlate. If I could point to you where there's
No,
large,
I'm just asking, but I'm
Yeah,
asking,
so I'm
is there
gonna
any
explain-
correlation or any causation in there?
there's some correlation, and I'll grant that there's some correlation, but I can also point to large government apparatuses where the state is entirely in control, where there's no degeneracy because you just face the wall in those governments, right? So the thing is that just correlating that because government has grown in size and degeneracy has also grown in size, it's not a good argument because I can point to complete authoritarian regimes where there's none of that at all and the government's totally in charge.
I still think that was a really good point because Dave's talking about our situation, not some third world country where they don't have a constitution. We're talking about right here, and it has grown, and I do think it was partially to blame on that.
So the thing is that
So what
government,
regimes are you thinking of?
I would guess that like places like North Korea, right? If you engage in degenerate actions, X bad thing happens to you, I would assume. So I'm just saying that the correlate itself is not enough to say that that is the cause. I think that NGOs are also a huge cause of these things, even NGOs which start absent any type of government movement at all, or massive think tanks which are privately funded. And oftentimes you see what'll happen with like the LGBTQ community and things like this. They create their own independent think tanks and NGOs, which then begin a mass lobbying campaign against morality. And once you have a lobbying campaign against morality, there's no real good reason why you should reduce government because you can't make good claims for why you should. Just like, why should we do any of this stuff? What happens with these LGBTQ think tanks especially, they'll even go into Christian churches, things like this. They offer them bags of money to reevaluate the messaging inside of these churches. These are apparatuses which then go and bribe the government. And these are private institutions. They all start as private institutions. The government's not commissioning.
But then they go and bribe the government.
Yeah, but the government. But here's the thing.
Part of it.
But here's the thing. I think that private institutions will always either form a government or make moves to subvert a government because it's in their best interest to monopolize force. It's in their best interest to do it, just like it's in our best interest as Christians to monopolize the force apparatus of the state as well. If you want to scale back aspects of the state, great. I want to scale back aspects of the state too. Well, but that really ultimately has nothing to do.
What aspects do you want to scale back?
Oh, I'd like to scale back, especially
EPA.
social spending when it comes to social safety nets. I'd like to scale back a lot.
Why would you want to? I'm just curious. I don't mean to interrupt you, but so why do you want to scale back social aspects of the state?
Because I think that many of those social aspects are violations of ethical concerns. So an ethical concern of robbing Peter to pay Paul, various things like this, I think that those are unethical. Those are ethics concerns.
Okay, and why? Why is that unethical?
It's unethical because I follow Christian ethics, and under this particular ethical framework, we would say that this type of theft would be incorrect, and that the state apparatus, it's not really their concern to move into that. That would be charitable
Dave is Jewish, so it didn't make sense to him.
organizations which would move into doing distribution that way.
I'm so curious about this, so I just have to ask because you kind of like grilled me before about what my ethics are. So what is it? So
we share the same. We share the same ethics. So I don't know what your argument is.
I'm not making an argument. I'm asking a question. So robbing Peter to pay Paul, why is that unethical? What do you mean by that?
Well, I'm saying that if you have centralized relocation from the successful to the non-successful, the reason that this becomes an ethical concern is because you're engaging in theft, obvious theft.
Okay, but isn't that always what government does by its nature?
No,
is robbing Peter to pay Paul?
Don't be. Dave is one of my favorite Jewish people in the world. He's a great guy. This is just a debate. Like, don't take it too personal.
No, I don't think that taxation is necessarily theft in many circumstances. I think it can be theft.
What makes it theft in your description, but not in others?
In which description?
So you just said it's obviously theft to rob Peter to pay Paul. So what made that theft and what makes it not theft in other situations?
Well, maybe I'm not.
And who finances that? Who finances that war?
Understanding the question correctly. Can you give me an example?
You just said in your example that this was robbing Peter to pay Paul and it's theft. So what makes it theft in that situation, but not theft in other situations?
Like what other situation are you talking about?
Dude,
I just need a comparison real quick so I
any-
understand what you're asking.
What makes it in any other situation that government takes money from people not theft, but in the one you just labeled theft?
You mean, oh, okay, I see what you're saying. So you're saying, why is it theft to take a bunch of money out of a rich guy's account and give it to a guy, who's just poor because you want to, versus some other unique situation like infrastructure spending or things like this?
What you just said, Andrew. Stop buying time, man. I'm just curious.
I'm not trying to buy time. I just want to get it clarified. I just want it clarified.
Okay,
I don't think that infrastructure spending is theft. I don't think that taxation, property taxation even is theft. I don't think those things are theft. I think that a direct taking of your account for the purposes of giving it to a social group based on immutable characteristics is theft. That would be theft.
I'm just curious. What makes that theft?
That you're taking a thing which does not belong to you and creating a distribution of the thing which doesn't belong to you.
But so why wouldn't that be true for property taxes?
Because you don't actually own the property.
Right. So, but you just said they're taking something that doesn't belong to you. So do you actually own that property?
No, this is why I'm saying that the construction, the construction of ownership is just that, a construction.
Yeah,
so property
Andrew,
is a construction.
Hold on, Andrew, I think I have you in something here, and I think I do. Why was it theft?
No, I just want to make sure I'm clarifying
it. Why was it theft in your example? Why did you own it in your example, but not in mine?
Because I don't really.
It's so weird that Andrew never gets to the point where he sees ownership is just a right. It's your right to own something. So it's all just boils down to force. His use of force doctrine should apply to this too, because your right to anything, your right to freedom, your right to anything is just dependent upon force. If you can enforce it, you have it. If you can't, you don't.
I understand your example. That's why I'm trying to get it clarified.
It wasn't mine. It was yours. I'm saying
yes, the example of scaling back to rob Peter to pay Paul. I would say that is theft. However, taxation for property, I would not say it is because
when you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, why is it theft?
Yeah, because it's based around the construction which we have for theft or non-theft for property. That's the point.
If I may, if I could try to clarify, I'm not trying to make anyone's argument.
Yeah. Just clarify what he's talking about.
This is what's going on. Dave's saying, like, look, if under your theory, all taxation would be theft because it's taking away from a person and giving to someone else. You seem to be saying it's not theft if it's giving to sort of a public good. So like property tax to pay for roads, that's not theft. But property tax, presumably you would say this property tax to pay for welfare for single mothers, that would be theft, or to pay for LGBT issues or something like that. So he's saying, why isn't the property tax always theft? And you seem to be saying it's only theft if that money is given to particular entities. He's asking why that's the case.
Oh, based on immutable versus non-immutable. So if you are utilizing infrastructure and things like this, and you're paying for that infrastructure, you have local levies which are gone through and voted on for that infrastructure. That can't be theft because essentially the majority of your population is volunteering to move that money into the government coffers for that purpose. Whereas there is no such thing as voluntarism when it comes to the government levying your account. That's not voluntary and never has been. However, you have what's called, I'm going to explain. You have what's called duties, right? Duties can trump theft. For instance, you could say if you own yourself and the government conscripts you, that they're stealing you. Are they stealing you, Dave?
I'm sorry. Are they stealing
If the government conscripts you, you have a duty to go. A duty to go defend your homeland if you are conscripted for war. Is the government stealing you?
They're enslaving you, sure.
It's enslavement to be conscripted in a draft to defend your homeland.
Well, I mean, look, you see,
if it's against your will, yes.
To defend your homeland. How about if they conscript you to go over to Ukraine and fight the Russians? Is that enslaving you?
Yeah, I'm not sure that it is because I think you do have duties.
So if your government led by Joe Biden decides that you're now conscripted and you will be on a plane over to Ukraine to fight on the front lines, they haven't enslaved you.
No, I don't think so. I think you have duties still in society. Don't you think you have duties to be conscripted? Like if you were attacked.
No, I think we have lots of duties, but I think if Joe Biden tells you to go die on the front,
you might be able to make good moral. You might be able to make good moral. Bro, you might be resist that. Dave. You might be able to make good moral objections to this type of draft.
I think as long as only half of the population has to go fight in that war, it is still slavery. If everyone had to deal with it, yeah, I could see that. But if only half of us have to, yeah, it's slavery.
In the duty itself, that's fine. However, if your homeland's attacked and you're conscripted, that's okay, right? But how is that not enslavement then?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it is. Or
it's not. Or it is. It's enslavement to be drafted to protect the homeland if it's attacked by a foreign enemy, Dave?
Yes. Essentially, yes, it is.
Yes. Okay. Great. So no duty at all. No duties.
Here's the thing is that it's funny because you start laughing, but then like you can't, when I say if you were grabbed, gun put to your head and dragged out to the Ukrainian front lines and forced to fight on the Ukrainian front lines, you can't say, yes, that is me being enslaved.
I think you can.
I don't think we have a duty to fight in Ukraine. I think we have a duty to defend this country if we're called upon. But I don't really see, I think Dave's making a pretty good point here. Like if they make me go fight in a war in Europe that has nothing to do with us, I would think that's slavery for sure.
Make moral objections to it. Yeah.
Hold on. Then you turn it to what if like people are, invading our country. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'll say this. If people were invading our country and people like a foreign army is coming up through my neighborhood, I think you sure could make a moral argument that I have a responsibility to go to the front line.
Right. This is the point when we're talking about the draft. So we're not talking past each other.
Let me just finish this. So I think you could make an argument that I have a moral responsibility to go to the front lines and start fighting to make sure my family is okay.
What if you don't have a family?
Leave him finish.
Huh?
What if you don't have a family? It's just you.
Okay, but I'm talking about me, and I do. So anyway, let me finish.
But what if you didn't? Would you have a moral obligation then?
Great. So let me just finish.
Okay.
So, but if I say make the judgment that I go, you know what? There's too many of them. We got to retreat and we got to try to surround them and come back. And someone puts a gun at my face and goes, no, you have to go to the front line right now. Then yeah, in essence, they have enslaved me.
So then you're making my point again so that you understand.
No, I'm not.
I'll explain how. When you're talking about duties, you asked me, you said, would it be a duty? So I'm talking about what is a current duty. So I'm saying, yeah, currently that would be your duty. But to moral objections, which you could make would be about just. You could say it's an unjust war, so therefore it doesn't fall under my duties. You are making the exact same claim. This is an unjust war. It doesn't fall under my duties, right? So if I'm conscripted, though, for a just war, like an invasion, then it does fall under duties. So then it's not enslavement, right? However, in both situations, it still would be enslavement by your ideology. You don't really have duty here.
That's not really the distinction. The distinction is whether voluntarism versus force. So no, I'm not saying that. Like if there could be a just war where someone still flees and abandons the war. But that doesn't mean that if they were but look, even whether you
dereliction of
whether
duty.
whether you think it's justified or not, it would still be enslaving someone to force them to be a soldier in that war.
So if you
want to be a part of it.
So if you're conscripted and your homeland is under attack, you have no greater duty to defend your homeland.
It depends on the situation, man. Look, there were lots of people in Ukraine who fled, and I don't know that they were wrong. I don't know. Listen, a situation like the war in Ukraine, the United States of America and NATO provoked Russia for decades. Literally just poked this
what is that?
Fucking bear.
Dude, this is on a tangent that has nothing, no bearing on the moral.
No. It has total bearing. Give me 2 seconds and you'll understand what I'm saying. They poked this bear over and over again until Russia invaded. And then when Russia invaded and Ukraine was about to get fucked up, look, I understand where there'd be people in Ukraine who wanted to jump on the front lines and fight again. But I also understand where there'd be people who go, listen, I got to try to get my family out and get the hell out of here. So it's not so black and white as to like whether like there's this situation where someone invades your country and it's just justified to fight back against them. I I think maybe if you're
We're
listening,
talking
to what I'm
not
saying, you
about
get
that.
my
We're talking
point.
about conscription, though. So
Okay,
I do. And
yes,
I'll steel
the
man. Hang on.
Ukrainian
I'll
army
steel
is
man the point.
conscripted.
Yeah, I'll
Listen,
steel man.
listen.
Let me steel man the
Steelman,
point.
last point on this. Then we're
Okay.
going to get to closing statements because we
All
have
right.
a lot of super chats and questions from the audience. So
Yeah. So let me just steel man your point. Your point is, look, this isn't so black and white. There could be situations where I could see conscription as being a duty. I could see it as not being a duty. I'm not arguing that. I just want a concession that at least sometimes it must be. And if at least sometimes it must be a duty, then you do have greater duties than just owning you. Just owning you can't be enough. There must be additional duties on top of that, like conscription.
Well,
Okay.
look, if you're saying just owning me,
So technically, men have greater duties, women don't. We all knew that.
again, I have a ton of duties on top of just owning me. I have a
What?
duty, an obligation to protect my wife, my kids, to provide for them,
Why?
to give them a great life.
If you own yourself, why do you have such a duty?
Again, from what we said at the very beginning, it has nothing to do with owning myself. I do own myself. And why do I have such a duty? Because I believe in God, and God wants me to be a great father and a great husband.
So God owns you.
Okay. Listen, there's never a
again.
good place to end. I know that it sucks. We could keep going on with this. What we're going to do is do closing statements.
All
It'll be
right.
up to 7 minutes apiece. We will start with Dave. You can say whatever you want. Andrew, don't interrupt. And then Andrew can say whatever he wants. So you can summarize the debate. You get any positions that you wanted to clarify, whatever you like for 7 minutes. Then we'll get to some audience questions. So go ahead, Dave.
Quick call out for Rob Noah. Did a great job here. He explained some things and helped calm the debate. Did a great job. Go subscribe to Rob Noah. His show is called Normal America. He didn't have that up there. I got this one from the Crucible. So subscribe to Crucible too, and Dave. Part of the problem. Yeah, subscribe to all those.
Floor is yours.
All right. Well, look, let me just say before we go to these questions, I will say I have the feeling that Andrew annoyed me a bit in this debate, but I have a feeling I would really like the guy if we just hung out. And I actually have enjoyed some of the back and forths that we've had on this. So I would just say that I think there's been some points that are made here that I don't think accurately reflect the position that I'm taking, and perhaps I've been unfair in some of the positions Andrew's taking. So let's just say I own a book, like let's say, I don't know, one of these books right here. Okay, here, I got a book. Okay, I own this book. Now it's a really good book to me. Now let's say I get that book. Now I've read it. I've actually read it twice, but let's just say I bought that book and I own it. And instead of reading it, I burned it. And you were to say, wait a minute, Dave, do you own that book? If you own it, it would be wrong for you to burn it rather than read it. The point is that, yes, I probably agree with you. It would be a better thing for me to do to read that book than to burn it. That has nothing to do with whether I own it or whether it would be right for someone else to come by force and take it away from me. I think that's kind of like the difference that's been, we've been talking past each other a little bit. I think that some of these outlandish examples about, well, if you really believe in self-ownership, then you can have no moral qualms about what anyone does with their self-ownership, just isn't accurate. And I think that in the world we're living in, and this is something, again, that the paleoconservatives, their best thinkers, please, anybody listening, go read Pat Buchanan or Paul Gottfried or Sam Francis or any of these guys. One of the things that they understood was that part of the reason why American society has degenerated so much, part of the reason why we've had such a divergence from normalcy in our culture is because the government has gotten more and more powerful. And if you want to have more power in the hands of communities and churches and parents and families, you want to reduce the size and scope of government. So that's what I would say. And whatever Andrew wants to finish with before we go into questions.
All right, let me say, Dave's kind of right here. You have a right to ownership of that book as long as you have the force to ensure that you can own that book, or as long as you live in a government that gives you the right and the backing of force to ensure you have the right to keep that book. Like I was saying, this all just comes down to force, just like the rights argument. It's all just force.
Okay, sounds good. Andrew, you got up to 7 minutes. Go ahead.
You would like me. I'm a real fun guy to be. I'm just a fun guy, Dave. Okay. So the thing is I did enjoy the debate. Just so you know, I don't take any of this kind of stuff personally. I think that this type of discourse, as brutal as it can be, and as entertaining as I think it is for people because it's so brutal, I don't feel like you're a guy who holds personal grudges. And it seems like you kind of enjoy, as much as you might not have enjoyed some aspects of it, I think that you probably enjoy the back and forth as much as I do. Ultimately, though, you have to reevaluate some things here, I think, ultimately. And I'm still going to bring you around to my way of thinking. And perhaps next time we won't do a debate, but we'll just do a good old-fashioned convo. The first thing is that you kind of pretend and are pretending to the audience that these are extreme examples of things which I bring up, but they're not. These are things which are happening right now. We have incest laws right now. We have laws against LGBTQ or for LGBTQ right now. These are social issues of our time, transitioning social issue of our time. These things are not things which are in a far away, far off land, in a faraway future. These are right now, right here, right in our face, and we're discussing them as though they're right in our face because they are. And so when we get to the moral ought portion of this, you realized, I think, early on that you can't really justify self-ownership as anything other than a construction, and that your morality comes from God. That's why I was willing to just kind of grant all the absurdity and say, sure, it's just God talking in my mind. Dave says, me too. It's like, great. Well, then we agree. It's all divine command. There's no ownership. It's just a social construct. Perfect. Now we know where we can go with our moral ought claims, how we get to where it is that we're going. Unfortunately, for these oughts, we're going to need enforcement. There's no way around it. And that's going to require some type of enforcement apparatus. Now, maybe it doesn't have to be the state. Fine. But I didn't hear anything absent the state. I never actually heard Dave say a word about why people can't engage in these if they own themselves. Unfortunately, he never really gave us any good reasons for why, if you do own yourself, why you can't engage in these absurd activities, other than he just really doesn't like them, other than to appeal to what I would, which is divine command. And if that's the case, you don't own yourself, and the non-aggression principle no longer makes sense. He never could justify that, ever. And that was kind of the core at the heart of this debate. When we get into duties, he says, I do have some duties and obligations, but when I ask him where they come from, it's from God. Again, it's divine command which gives him these duties and obligation, not libertarianism. Libertarianism as a core isn't doing anything to advance what could be a duty inside of society. It's just unfettered rights. And all right is a privilege absent a duty. When we get into whether or not can a person be conscripted, sometimes, maybe, don't know, kind of, possibly. It just, it's context matters. It's like, okay, yeah, context matters, but at the core, can they, without them being slaves? I think that Dave kind of understands, yeah, there's a time and a place for that, where there's a greater duty that we have to appeal to. Overall, because it was combative and we are coming at it from really different worldviews, I don't think we got to the heart of everything that either of us would have liked to have gotten to the heart of. But I did enjoy the spirited debate. And again, no grudges at all, Mr. Smith. And in the future, I'll just come on your show and we'll have a good convo or something like that. But I do hope you did enjoy yourself at the very least. So thank you.
I did enjoy myself, Andrew, and thank you very much. I don't agree with your synopsis of my opinion, but I am definitely down to do another podcast together.
Well, cheers to you, sir.
Cheers, brother.
I had fun. I loved it.
We can drink. Are there nationalists? Are we're going to make that legal? All right, good.
All right, I'm going to stop this here. Yeah, I'm more of a libertarian than Dave, I guess. I thought he was more of one than me because I'm not really that big of a libertarian. I'm in closed borders. So that was some of the things he said was kind of weird. I would have answered much differently. But I still am a big fan of both of these guys. I think they're great commentators. They're the best debaters I can find to show y'all. So yeah, I don't care if two trans people want to cut their dicks off. That's less people like reproducing. Like, let's get the crazies to all cut their dicks off if we're going to do that. Like, that way I know we're going to have better votes in the future. My grandkids will have really better votes. So I'm a little bit more libertarian in some ways. In some ways, I guess I'm not. But and I ANCAP, Dave would be like a very vanilla ANCAP. I know some ANCAPs that are really capitalist anarchy and all that. I'm not that far either. That's kind of crazy, but yeah. Go check out the rest of this because the super chats are good and stuff. I just don't have the time for it right now. And please subscribe if you like the content. I will be stopping begging, asking y'all to do that as soon as I hit 1,000, and I'll never ask you for anything again except your attention. That's all I really need from you is your attention. So let's let me get this down. Let's plan this again tomorrow. I'll see y'all tomorrow. And let's try this song. Yeah, I like this one. All right, see y'all tomorrow. Peace.